Thank you very much. Coming on stage is a team from PAIX also, Emmanuel, Makina. Raise a hand. Oh, yeah, so right at the, fine. So please come on stage. Chimdi, Chiezukwa from Freepass. Is he in the room? Oh, Karibu. Come on stage here. Elly, Kabaji from MTN. Elly in the house? Welcome, come on stage. And then lastly, we have Kiplabatt Koskei from Plugin X. Karibu. I think we've got the mics on each of the tables. Let's share the mics there. So we'll start with a round of introductions. Just introduce yourself very briefly, and then we can take it from there. We can start from this end.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chimdi Chiezukwa. I'm the CEO for Freepass. Freepass is a localized CDN building local CDNs in Africa for content origination within Africa and content distribution within Africa. Thank you.
Yes, hello. I'm Kiplabatt Koskei. I run an entity called Plugins Internet Exchange Point. Basically, what you are doing at Plugins Internet Exchange Point is to make sure we have big bandwidth available for the people peering at all the data centers. So basically, we are more focused about a campaign called Chiezukwa. In this campaign, we want all the local content owners, all the local servers, all the locals.co.ke domains to be part of the exchange. Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Elly Kabaji. I'm a seasoned ICT professional, currently doing as an engineer, doing sales. I come from Bayobab, Kenya. Most of you might wonder who is Bayobab. Bayobab is that tree of life. And at Bayobab, Kenya, we do connectivity to the ICT providers. So as the tree of life is, we connect all the other entities and all other service providers to ensure that they have got digital services. So we are an enabler in the market. So as we progress, we'll get to know more what we do. Thank you.
Yeah, and my name is Emmanuel Makina. I'm in charge of sales at PAIX data centers. I know most of you have heard the name PAIX. It's actually an acronym for Pan-African Internet Exchange Data Centers. So we are a Pan-African operator of data centers. We design, build, and operate our own data centers across Africa. So we have data centers in Ghana. We have also in Kenya. And we are currently setting up in Rwanda and also Djibouti. So in Kenya, our data center is in Britam Tower in Upper Hill. It's a tier 3+ facility. And I'm looking forward to having a good discussion with the members here. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Tim. I want you to assume for a moment that I do not know what a data center is. And maybe tell us explain like you're explaining to a Gen Z, what is a data center?
First, I'm usually very careful nowadays when I talk about those guys. You know,
I don't assume that we do not know what a data center is.
I don't want them to visit me or visit our data center, so we are very careful on how we talk to them. So a data center is basically a facility that acts as an aggregation point or an interconnection point for computers. So for our case, we are a carrier and cloud neutral data center. So what this means that we are not affiliated to any telco or we are not affiliated to any cloud service provider. So we work with all internet service providers. We host all internet exchanges, and we also work with all content delivery networks as well as all cloud service providers. So in this case, we already have around 35 internet service providers in our facility. And when we talk of the internet exchanges, we also have the Kenya Internet Exchange in our data center. We also have plugin PAIX. And in terms of the content delivery networks, we also have what we call the international CDNs and the local CDNs. So I'm sure Chim will talk more about it. So what we do as a data center is just to make sure we provide what we call a bulletproof facility. Well, what I mean by this is that it will never go off. So we have put all the redundancy measures in terms of power, cooling, and the connectivity just to make sure that when customers bring their servers, they will always be connected and they will never go off. So that's what we do in a nutshell.
Thank you, Emmanuel. And I want to urge everybody, you'll hear a lot of acronyms, and please ask the questions. I'm sure they'll be ready to answer. My next question goes to Kiplabatt. What is the role of internet exchanges in the internet ecosystem? Maybe just take like 2-3 minutes and elaborate. Thank you.
Let me try to simplify, first of all, what is an internet exchange point. We've had what is a data center. Data center are like landlords. They build and they safeguard your equipment, your servers. Then we now have another part which is called connectivity providers. Connectivity providers are the people who own the fiber that comes into the data center. Then you have now the tenants in a data center. These are now your servers, your application servers, your content providers. Those are the tenants in the data center. And now we have the internet exchange point. The purpose of an internet exchange point is to interconnect all the tenants. If you have this particular server, that other server, and these other servers, you are connected through an internet exchange point. An internet exchange point basically is a collaboration of all tenants within a data center to share traffic. This sharing of traffic is what is referred as peering. And when you peer, there are so many reasons why you should peer. One of the best reasons is it is cheaper, you save. The other reason too why you should peer is for security reasons. So basically, an internet exchange point sits at the center of the data center, and it's part of a community. The part of the community, one is the data center. Example, there's a landlord, the tenants, all the servers within the data center, and 3, the internet service providers, the ISPs. We can divide the ISPs into 2. The people who give you internet and those people who bring fiber into the data centers. We call them the connectivity providers. So all of us, we are called the community, the internet community.
Thank you very much. That's very well put. Did you want to add something? Oh, okay. I thought you were raising your hand. My next question goes to Elly. How does hosting your core network equipment at a data center, how is this helping your organization, and what benefits are you accruing in being a data center?
Thank you. As I mentioned, we deal in the connectivity, and connectivity serving multiple other ISPs with the connectivity. That means that these ISPs will converge at some point. So, and if we are going to do connectivity across the globe and the region, for example, look at East Africa, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, probably Somali, South Sudan. If you are doing connectivity to these people, or rather the ISPs players in that industry, they will need high level of availability. High level of availability. Some of them will tell you we need 99.999%. The 5 nines, those who have heard of it. So to guarantee that kind of connectivity becomes a challenge if you are going to do it in your unilateral data centers. Why? Because of availability of power, because of cost of operations, and many, many other reasons. So the first key reason why most of us service providers or other connectivity providers find ourselves at the data center is key to increase availability. Secondly, at the data center, it's a convergence point. As my colleague has just mentioned, it's a host of the ecosystems. So while you are at the data center and there is that convergence, it brings seamless access to the services. So if I have to connect to many other providers, we call it the NNI, network to network interface. I will quickly and simply establish it at the data center just by a single cross connect. With that regard also, you look at the data center is a convergence of people. So there's a lot of expertise. So if you are at the data center, you're going to look at, if it's in engineering, so many engineers converging there with various areas of expertise. Those who are expertise in Cisco, Juniper, name all those kind of devices. You'll find them at the data center. So it becomes an easy area for you to leverage the expertise that is there. At the data center also, you are looking of cost. Other than just efficiency and availability, it's a matter of cost. If I'm running a network, the whole country, and along the network nodes, I'm doing all the hosting, different data centers in so many other places. And as you are seated here, over almost 200 people. If you are going to run your own data centers, so you can imagine the cost of running it. So a single data center, to run it, it means if you are all going to converge in one area, you cut down on your costs. So that means individually, it will trickle down to the respective companies. So the cost of operation becomes very low. At the data center also, we are looking at security. If you have to enhance security on your data, respectively, on various different locations, then there are some areas you will not manage. But if you converge at the data center, then you leverage on physical security and cyber security. So as you build this ecosystem, or the internet ecosystem, you find that convergence, really you are going to leverage it on each other in so many other areas. So security becomes very, very key. And as I've mentioned, physical security and cyber security. If you dig deeper into the data center, the levels of security that they have, oh my, it's very high. And most of them are standardized. So when you look at the data center, the other benefit is that there's a lot of standardization. When you talk of standards, there is most of the data centers in Kenya today, they are tier 4 data center. So the moment you put them into the tiers, you reach at tier 4. It's only that we don't have tier 5 fully, because our national grid of power is only 1. Yeah? And when you go to tier 5, it means everything has to be 1 plus 1, 1 plus 1. So if you are at tier 4, it means your primary source of power will definitely be green power. And then by the time you come to national grid, then you come to DG generators, which you cannot run unilaterally or autonomously. Effectively, you will not manage. So those are just a few, but just to mention, there are so many other benefits that you will have at the data center. But as for the people who are seated here, the ones I've mentioned are very critical. First and top mode on the list is availability. 99.999, the 5 nines. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Chimdi Chiezukwa, you're CEO of Freepass. Tell us the role of content delivery networks and why it's important for the CDNs to be within a data center.
Okay, thanks. We're all at this event right now, and this event is being streamed live. Now, it's being streamed on Zoom. Zoom is in a data center somewhere outside Kenya. So for that video to be seen by other people, it has to go to a CDN. That's where the originating stream is happening from. You're streaming from here, but you have to use connectivity from him to go meet the CDN, the host server, in another country where that stream is originated from. Then it goes back to another set of CDNs for distribution. Now it goes to maybe CDNs in Mombasa, in Accra, Lagos, and other parts of the world for distribution. Now, all of these CDNs have to be in a data center for them to be able to have access to connectivity providers, to have access to exchange that makes it possible for you to watch it on your mobile phone or your laptop or any other device you have. Now, without a CDN being at the data center, it's impossible for you to have access to that traffic. If the CDN is standing alone in its own premises, then there is no way a connectivity provider will be able to access that traffic. Having the exchange to connect that traffic to all of the ISPs, that's basically ISPs are like access providers. So they are only providing access to you, to the CDN, through the connectivity provider, but sitting at the data center. So it's more than important that every CDN is in a data center, and there is no way you find a CDN that is outside the data center. Be it AWS, Google, Netflix, Meta, every one of them have to be in a CDN, as in a data center, because that's the only way they can share that traffic to the access providers. Now, the access providers, who are the ISPs or the MNOs, your mobile network operators, have to go to the exchange to peer with the exchange. But the exchange is using the connectivity provider to reach external CDN and bring them local. But you see, for that, most of the, as in every one of us seated here now, our traffic that we consume every day, 95% of them are from external CDN. So if we're not consuming YouTube or Google traffic, we're consuming Meta traffic, we're consuming Netflix traffic or AWS or Microsoft. So currently in Africa, we do more of external traffic than we do more of internal traffic. So it's a challenge for connectivity providers who have to spend more money investing on external traffic pool. It's the reason why we have more undersea cable coming from Europe, Asia, and other parts of the world into Africa, rather than we having interconnection within Africa. So if you ask him, he will tell you that the cost of interconnection within Africa is more expensive than the cost of interconnection to the other parts of the world. And it shows that we have not really enabled data centers in Africa to provide a better service to the African ecosystem that makes it possible for African-originated services to come up and monetize within Africa.
Wow. Elly, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, just as he has mentioned, and as we are seated, 4 of us here, you'll see and you've heard most of what we are talking of is very much interconnected. I want you to look at your hands, of the 5 fingers of your hands. When you talk of the internet ecosystem, today you are looking at 5 pillars. First and foremost is communication. So all of us, we've talked about communication, exchange of data from one point to another, browsing of websites, exchange of emails, and so on. So communication comes in very key, and which finds its heart at the data center, because at the data center is where you store that information that you communicate. Secondly, you are looking into entertainment. He comes in very strongly on the contents. When you talk of content, CDNs, just quickly think into your mind, Google coming in with the YouTube. Most of you watch YouTube a lot. And Facebook, or rather Meta coming in with the Facebook and Instagram and the likes. And then we have got the Gen Zs coming in with their TikTok. So all this content, if you are looking at Maandamano in Kenya, and then you stream it all the way from South Africa or Europe, you can imagine you'll not enjoy. You'll not see it real. You'll not follow it closely. But all that is exchanging locally at an exchange point or at a server seated in a data center. So entertainment comes in key, and you don't want to get into entertainment. Maybe you're watching a movie and it is going buffering, those cycles. So entertainment comes in very key. And then thirdly, you are looking into e-commerce. Most of you here, I look at your faces, they are telling me you are business people. And most of you run multiple businesses to the point of a kibanda, maybe somewhere in your locality. You want, when you are in your office, you look at your stocks, e-commerce. It's running data in a data center, running through the ecosystem of connectivity exchange of data. Fourthly, you are looking at education, e-learning. E-learning comes in as a very strong fourth pillar, in the sense that today everyone is talking about university without walls. You are in Kenya, sitting an exam from a university in the US through the ecosystem on the internet. Then number 5 comes in as security. Everyone, and a simple example, ladies who are here, if someone tells you something is happening to your child at home, you will run out of this house, this room very fast. And you'll want to call. And if you have a camera there, you'll want to look at it through the internet, the ecosystem. So that is enhancing your security. And when you talk of security, physical security and cyber security. So that's what I just want to add on, just to say that it's a real ecosystem. It's a real ecosystem. So that's the role we play there. And just as I did the introduction, one thing I didn't mention, I've seen some people who know me, they are wondering who is this Bayobab. Bayobab is formerly MTN Global Connect. So you hear of MTN, you hear of Bayobab, connect the two. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kiplabatt, you want to add something?
Yeah, maybe I could just demystify the purpose of an internet exchange point on a real life scenario. We've heard the word buffering. Buffering is when the content is not pulled fast enough as the way you want it. And two things come into play there. The first question I ask you, where is your server? If you host your server in Germany because there's big bandwidth there, yet your consumers are in Kenya, you are doing the wrong thing. First of all, you don't have quality of experience. The latency are too much. And that's the reason why we are, as Kenyans, as here in Kenya, we have data center providers. We are here as internet exchange providers. We want you to have your servers at a Kenyan data center. And one of the best benefits you'll enjoy is that you'll be reaching your Kenyan consumers more. If 80% of your consumers of your services are in Kenya, you definitely need to be in a Kenyan data center, and above it all, connect to an internet exchange point. There are two things, secondly, I would like to ask you. Why are you buying bandwidth? I'll define bandwidth into two ways. The first bandwidth, I like to call it wet capacity. The capacity that now leaves Kenya and goes abroad to your servers abroad. And the other capacity, I want to call it local content, or let me say dry capacity. The dry capacity is now what the capacity that you get at the exchange level. Example, Bayobab has connected to a university and our students at the university. So that particular traffic passes through an internet exchange point. Assuming both of them are connected at a speed of 10 Gbps, that means you'll never see buffering. These are the many reasons why you find most of our IPTV solutions are hosted in South Africa and not in Kenya. Is because we have not built our CDNs in locally, and therefore we don't enjoy the benefit of 4K streaming. So the first way for you to save costs is to increase efficiency. And by that, you come to an exchange in a data center in Kenya.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kiplabatt. I have just one last question, and I want each of you to just take a minute or less. Tell us, what are the coolest innovations you've seen in data centers recently, and how is this going to change the game for Africa? Innovations. Let's speak innovations. Emmanuel, do you want to go first?
Maybe let me go first.
Yeah, sure.
Previously, we did not have proper facilities in Africa. I think that explains why most of the domain hosters were doing it outside the country. But right now we have world-class facilities in Kenya, and I will take this opportunity to welcome you to come and have a look at what we have done here in Nairobi. So some of the innovations that we have done is about efficiency. So we have deployed what we call smart systems, and our philosophy that we use in our data center is what we call a modular system, in the sense that we only deploy an equipment that we need at that particular time, so that in terms of energy consumption, you only consume what you need at that time. Then also in terms of cooling, we have also done smart cooling, because the servers generate a lot of heat, so they need to be cooled. And in terms of the standards we use what we call ASHRAE standards, where we keep the temperature between 18 degrees to 27. So we have also deployed a lot of IoT solutions, and we do what we call, we have used a pod or containments, so that when you are in this room, maybe you are feeling hot, she's feeling cold, we don't have to cool everybody. We just cool that person who needs to be cooled. So that's how we are doing it. Then also we have deployed what we call a smart BMS system. We are able to track the power consumption real time, so that we know if you are being efficient or not. Then also in terms of we have done is the design of the data centers. Previously, you could design a data center and hoping that things will work out. But right now when you are building a data center, you have specific objectives. You are working with that. So in terms of power usage efficiency, we have a target maybe of 1.2 that has to be met from the design stage. So that way we are more efficient, and we pass on the savings in terms of cost to customers. So it's becoming cheaper to host the content locally, because the data centers are more smart. Thank you.
You want to go next?
Yeah, I think one of the coolest things I've seen in data centers across Africa now is the level of interconnection that is happening. If we take the example of data centers in Kenya, let me mention PAIX that we are co-located at. You see data centers now that have pre-configured ODF in your rack for you, as against the system where you have to run cable from your own rack to the next person you want to connect to. They've done a pre-cabling of it that allows for seamless cross-connect. And that level of infrastructure has made it possible for more connectivity to happen. Now, I can exchange about 1 TB of traffic with the internet exchange point. I can get the connectivity provider to give me capacity to Rwanda at maybe 100 or 200 gig, just using a single cross-connect cable. Now, that has made it possible for more local service to begin to spring up. It's possible today now for EdTech service providers to host services locally and have the same kind of efficiency and performance that they will have if they were hosting somewhere in Europe. Now, it has changed the dynamics that makes it that it's becoming more interesting and more cheaper to host and operate services locally within Africa.
Elly?
Just to add on, there's a lot of convergence and distribution. So one of the areas I've liked at the data centers is distributed systems. And in this case, it really gives you leverage platform for enhancing distributed systems. in the sense that you are looking at DR as a service. You might look at infrastructure as a service, and those who are like in the automation, they'll find it very easy at the data center. For example, locating in Nairobi, my customers comes in and tell me, I want to get to Ghana. How do I go there? I find PAIX in Ghana. And the same thing, we only do a connection in between. And the two nodes are up and running. Miles away, thousands of miles away, but still running a distributed system. So those are some of the areas of innovation that data centers have really brought into the digital world. Is a disruption, a real disruption, but disruption to the positive.
Interesting. Nicholas?
Basically, according to the data centers in Kenya, I'd like to change it towards the human and the community perspective of the innovations. When we look at a data center, it's basically a shell. It's basically a big house with everything done. But behind it, we have now the community, the ISPs, the connectivity for providers, the consumers, and the tenants. So currently in Kenya, what I really see is that the data centers are working together to pull up and educate and accept and incubate the startups. There is no single tenant in a data center who does not know his neighbor. We have seminars, we have forums whereby we come and meet, and I tell you I'm an internet exchange point, and you tell me you have a server. Then we synergize and say 1 + 1 is equals to 3. So your services, my solution, his carrier capabilities are all found in one place. I love the idea whereby we have community days and what we call beers for peers in data centers. Basically, these are just functions inviting all peers together. We discuss our problems, we discuss our winnings, we exchange ideas, and at the end of the day, if you've made your way to a data center, there's something you can offer. And when you offer something, remember you're offering to a community. Internet is basically a community. It's a solo island. We are all like internet, and we work together as a community. And that's what data centers are innovating currently in Kenya.
Thank you very much, team. Round of applause. And we're happy to take a question or two. There's two questions. Okay. You can use this mic. Oh, there's a mic over there. There's a mic over there.
Thank you so much. I think you're doing great. I've been sitting here taking notes after every minute. My name is Howie Rapudo from Internet Society. I'm the Secretary General, and I also run a community network. My question is very cheap. What is the cooperative model around data center? The way a cooperative is run, can it be run like a cooperative in Kenya, where we have anybody with can have small data components to put there to the largest of all? And then that is one. Two, and then how do you see underserved communities fitting? Because for me, that's why I speak. Thank you.
Do you want to answer that one first, or take? Okay.
Let me try to answer you first. Basically, data centers are a neutral ground. The best accolade that a data center can have is neutrality. Neutrality to a small player, mkulima mdogo, neutrality to a startup, and a neutrality to a big player. So basically, in data center is a neutral ground. You are welcomed. You can come there and negotiate your deals together. They can give you what is called the setup time to start. And also, internet exchange points are also a neutral facility. So everybody is welcomed to join and feel comfortable.
Maybe I can just come in. So The beauty of being in a data center is, as Elly had explained, setting up and running a data center is very expensive, so the upfront cost is usually very high. So the beauty of being in a data center is that you are able to scale on need basis or to descale on need basis as well. So we have room to accommodate everybody based on their requirements. So we do not discriminate. So we can discuss with you the plans you have for growth, then we can reserve space for you for growth. And we even have like dedicated space for customers with the limited requirements. And you still enjoy the same security benefits like the customers, like the big cloud guys. Yeah, so we do not discriminate at all.
So let me add to, he asked another question about the benefit to a community network like yours. Now, in a data center, you have different levels of players. You also have government parastatals who are in the data center as well. So in Kenya here, I know about ICTA. Yeah, so you have ICTA at the data center as well. Now, I don't know where your community is, but imagine you want to take capacity from a connectivity provider, and you've been able to negotiate a good rate with him, but the cost of transport to your community becomes the hindrance in delivering that service. Because you have government agencies as well in the data center, it's possible for you to go negotiate with that government agency. We're running a community network in our community. How can you give us 1 gig of capacity to our community at a much more reduced rate? It's a government cable, so it's possible for the government to look at it and say, you are serving a community, and offer you something much more reduced right from the data center that makes it possible for you to operate what you are doing.
You asked very good questions, my brother. Just to add on what my colleagues have said, and in a very practical way. For example, you are running a community network. It's in Wajir. You want to tap into the benefits that are seated at PAIX data center. You find the carriers are convergent there. And today we are talking of very many other carriers. For example, our MNOs, the mobile network operators, they have not really been carriers, but by default, they have become carriers. Why? Because they run infrastructure to connect from one base station to another, one town to another, for their own use. Eventually, they have been using like 20% of that infrastructure. 80% was lying idle. But with the invent of data centers, what's happening today? These MNOs are finding themselves still at the data center with the 80% of the infrastructure idle. You see that? So if you are in Wajir, you want to tap at the resources at the data center from the OTTs, which are the CDN providers, and from the internet cloud. You will simply run your network countrywide from a single server. Place it at the data center, connect to the OTTs through the internet exchange point, and the carriers who have converged at the data center will carry for you and evacuate for you your traffic all the way to Wajir, Mandera, Northeastern, all the other corners of the world. And you will run your capacity network at that level. Carry 200 MBs out of your 1 GB to Mandera, 200 MBs out of your 1 GB to the other border, Taveta, 200 to Mombasa, and many other places. So you don't need to worry because the convergence guys are there. Number 2, you might not be capable of running a whole full rack. But at the data center, we have got activators, or rather what do we call them? The integrators. The integrators will come in. Their model of business is to build a huge infrastructure. So they take like 10 racks, plug in their equipments, plug in their servers, and at the end of the day, they'll sell for you space at the servers. So you might not even walk into the data center with a server. You'll go and find a server, infrastructure as a service, plug in your software, which is your billing software, and run your network. So today, we are talking of so many small ISPs that have grown very fast over a very short period of time. They have grown enormously. Why? Because of the onboarding of data centers in our space. So there's a lot of room of growth there, depending on what you want to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll take one more question. On condition you take 1 minute. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much. This was an enlightening panel. So I have a question regarding your operations. What are your pain points, especially for the data center or the carrier neutral carriers? Is your pain points the rent, the human resource, the energy by, I mean electricity and power, or is it bandwidth? Because most of our traffic comes from the west. Where do you see yourself spending more?
Yeah, so
Main points. Keep it brief.
yeah, I'll keep it very
Thank you.
very brief. So our number one challenge is people, because remember the carrier and cloud neutral data centers have just come up. So we have to finding the right talent is a big challenge. And when you find them, they are not really ready for that kind of industry. So we spend a lot of time training them and resources. But then what happens once they arrive, the big boys come for them. Then we start afresh again. So that has been a big challenge. Yeah, it's really difficult. Then in terms of power is not a really challenge for us. Power is available, it's reliable, apart from the few days when the airport is off, but most of the time it's there. The only challenge is the cost. So it's a bit expensive in terms of power for customers. So that's a challenge. Then initially, especially for the new data centers when they're starting up, remember a data center without this ingredient is just an empty building. So building that community is what it takes time. And when you are, it's a heavy expenditure. So if you are not able to build this ecosystem within a short period of time, then it can cost you a lot of money. So getting all these connectivity providers and all these content delivery network guys to come in and set up, it takes a bit of time. So those are the main challenges. But once the people know what is happening and they know the value, then you really have to create resources to onboard customers.
Thank you. One last question from the lady there.
Hello, it has been a great conversation and I've learned about CCTLDs and all that. So my name is Valerie Waswa. I wear many hats, but I would like to ask this question from a lawyer's perspective, being a tech lawyer. So I've had a lot of conversations around having local data centers and the aspect of data sovereignty. So my question is, what is the thin line between us encouraging local data centers and the aspect that more than ever we are interconnected and we need to have more data, we need to have more interactions and data flowing in different jurisdictions beyond Kenya. So where do you draw the line as to encouraging local data centers and also ensuring that there is also the flow of data and data sharing and traffic internationally? And then the other question is around AI. Artificial intelligence is a key disruptor of digital innovation right now. So the current data centers in Kenya, are there any of them that are currently working on supporting the development of artificial intelligence? And if not, what policies can be put in place to ensure that these data centers can have what it takes to encourage local development of artificial intelligence as a technology? Thank you.
Chim, you look like you're really eager to answer this one.
Okay, let me take the data privacy first. Now, currently, you use Gmail, you use YouTube, you use Instagram or TikTok. Now, you know that Google knows more, or let me just use it, the American system knows more about the pattern and behaviors of Kenyans more than the government of Kenya do.
Yep.
And the reason is simply because for every video you consume, they know what you've consumed, they know the content in that video. They are able to take that data, and the government in that country is able to use that data to design their own policies and their own way of relating with your country. So even when you see African leaders go for a lot of these summits that they go abroad, what those governments are using to discuss with them are the data that we have fed the companies from those countries. So we have willingly given our data out to them. Now, if you want to talk about data privacy, we have to reverse the process where we begin to build applications that are local to us, hosted within our own domain, whereby we own that data and we know we are the ones using the data locally, and the data privacy laws that are local can guide that data. The data privacy law that guides your data when you get on YouTube is not the Kenya data privacy law. It's the US data privacy law. You have no control when you don't have a localized CDN handling that for you. So the first ingredient for you to solve data privacy is begin to host all your content locally. Now, on the aspect of AI, I think if you are talking about what policy needs to be put in place to encourage AI, I think it's investment policy. AI requires GPU-based servers. GPU-based servers consume a lot of electricity. The cost of electricity is expensive. So when you begin to run AI servers locally here, the data center cost for power is going to go up. The bill they pay to Kenya Power will go up, meaning that more money is being spent trying to spin up GPU servers for AI computing. Now, what we need is investment into cheaper form of electricity that brings down the cost of power for the data centers. You find China has nuclear reactors for energy generation, which brings down the cost of power for their data centers. Europe used to use cheap gas from Russia until them and Putin decide to get into their little scrubble. But you see, when you host an AI server, a GPU server in Europe before the whole Ukraine-Russia war, it's way cheaper in terms of the power consumption, what you're paying for power, than what you're paying here in Kenya or anywhere in Africa. So if we want to solve that, then the government needs to begin to bring policies that first invest heavily in more source of power that brings down the cost of power. Then we have to look at policies that encourage local investors to invest in infrastructure locally. Our current local Kenyan or African investors prefer to go and buy land and keep the land for the next 20 years and then sell it later, rather than investing in anything that is infrastructural based in Africa. For us who have been involved in building infrastructure across Africa, we know the pain. We've been building with our own personal funds, and it's difficult when you sit in meetings with local African investors for them to even understand the need for investment into infrastructure. So we have to change that with government policies and regulation that encourages local investments in infrastructure, particularly at the data center level, where if it means giving investors locally who invest in it tax breaks, certain incentives that would spur them up to invest locally. All of us right now here, we look for money from outside of the continent to invest in infrastructure within the continent, which is, for me, it's wrong. We shouldn't be expecting the West to build Africa. We as Africans should build Africa for Africa.
Awesome.
Just to add something on the AI part of it, and this is an assurance. Yes, we are already participating in it. And AI, looking at it, the build-up of it is actually a distributed system. A lot of that work, preliminaries of capturing the inputs for AI, is happening in Kenya today. So we look at AI as simply mimicking the human behavior to actualize performance of systems. So the initial stages, most of them are happening in Kenya. We are somewhere. We should now be moving to what he's mentioned, that can we have now data centers with a huge supply of power? Because at the data centers, we are talking of space and power. So when we are getting there, we'll be full AI industry. Thank you very much. I think I want to call a hard stop for this panel, else we could go on and on. A round of applause. I think they've really educated us on matters, data centers and all. Maybe we can just, I think they want to take a group photo for this panel. Ready? Okay, so I'll take a minute. Thank you very much. At this point, I want to invite, do we have Kenneth in the house? Kenya Education Network? Great. Karibu sana.